Okay. So yesterday we learned a little bit about halachas of otzitz nokov. We learned that the otzitz itself is considered metaltlin. The zroyim growing inside it that are yonik from the oretz are considered karka, and therefore the appropriate kinyan for metaltlin, like Mashiach, has to be done on the otzitz. The proper kinyan for karka has to be done on the zroyim, such as chazaka. But we learned that if you want to buy the otzitz together with its contents, with its plant, then all you need to do is make a kinyan on the karka, on the zroyim with chazaka, and through kinyan agav, you'll be kind of the otzitz. And there was a silent toshus if you have to speak out, leich or kaniba agav, or agav ukni. If you have to agav ukni, since now they're connected, kinyan agav works even if the metaplin is not near the karka, or even if it's in the karka. But here, the otzitz is actually containing the plant. There, maybe you don't even have to say agav ukni because it's obvious from the circumstances that they're connected together. Okay, then we had a discussion of what happens if the knife is in Chutz La'aretz and the plant is in Eretz Yisrael. What would the halacha be? So the Gemara brought down a machlokes Abaye and Rava, where Abaye says you go according to where the Yanika is, and Rava says you go according to where the fruits are. The Gemara had a discussion. What happens if it's actually planted firmly, not hovering over, getting Yanika through the air? But if a plant is actually planted in Eretz Yisrael, do you say the same machlokes, or would everybody agree? Or would everybody agree that there you go bust with the Yanika? So the Gemara challenged this shy a little bit, but at the end of the day, the Gemara did not have a raya either way. But the Gemara did end up bringing a very interesting machlokes tanoim between Reb Meir and Reb Yehuda. And the machlokes was, if you have a tree that's growing right on the border of Eretz Yisrael and Chutz La'aretz, and its roots are not even intermingled, because right below the tree there's a boulder under the ground, which forced the roots of the Chutz La'aretz side to be completely in Chutz La'aretz, and the roots on the Eretz Yisrael side to be completely in Eretz Yisrael, that will split the nourishment, and according to one Tana, the nourishment from the Chutz La'aretz side will stay only on the Chutz La'aretz side, and the nourishment from the Eretz Yisrael side will stay exclusively on the Eretz Yisrael side. The other Tana holds no. Once the nourishment goes up through the trunk, it all mixes together, and therefore it's chulin v'tevel miravin zeh b'zeh. Okay, then we got into the next halacha of the Gimel Oyros. We discussed that there's a machlokes in our Mishnah if the Oyros have to be smeared with diphthera, and if the Oyros have to be smeared with otzitz, and otherwise, if it's not smeared with otzitz, it's called diphthera, and that smearing gives it a security anti-fraud feature. Uffits, thank you. If it's not smeared with uffits, it doesn't have that security anti-fraud feature. And we had a machlokes in our Mishnah if that would be good or not. So the Gemara brought examples of the different processes. Thank you so much. Different stages of processing afar. The first was called matzah, which has no processing done to it, and the Gabi Hotzai Shabbos, its value is only to wrap a counterweight in it. Then we talked about chifa, which has meliach, but it doesn't have kamiach, or it doesn't have afitz, and that's usable to write a kameah. And then we had the type of hide that's salted and it's floured, but it doesn't have afitz. That's the one that doesn't have the security feature, and the Gemara says that the value of that is to write on it a get. So you see, at least this Tana holds that you could write a get on a star that does not have, on a paper that does not have a security feature. Tosfos told us that a regular piece of cloth that has all of the features of a cloth, that the size of such a cloth is big enough to write on it a small parsha shebetzil. Okay, then. I'm sorry. It says Parsha K'tan Shebetzilin. I don't know which of the parshas is the smallest one. Thank you, Mati. Okay. Then the Gemara says that a chamar machshir, even if it could be mezuyaf, why is that? So Dr. Gemara, Dr. Belazar, the Amira, that it must be going according to Belazar, the Tana, who holds an Edim Mesira Karsi, and therefore we don't care. We don't care about the validity of the Edim signing the star. We don't care if it could be mezuyaf. You know why? Because our proof, if this woman wants to get remarried, she's going to have to drag along the Edim Mesira. So let's just clarify, what is the concern if it's a shtar sheyachal azayif? What might happen is you have a get, and it could have been written almanas that she's going to give him $100. It might say that in the get, and then the Edim say at the end. And what she could have done is she could have erased that t'nai. So she'll go to Bezdin, she'll show Bezdin, I have a get that says I'm divorced, no t'nai. When really there's a t'nai and she's not megureshes. But if you hold Edim Mesir Karshi, then in order for the Bezdin to give her paper, her receipt that she's megureshes, they would say, we want to speak to the Edim Mesir themselves. The Edim Mesir will say, we read the get, and the get had no t'noim in it, and she's megureshes. Then she gets her certificate from Bezdin that she's megureshes. That's why it could be a shtar sheyachal as daif, because we don't do anything with that shtar. The verification is provided by the Edim Mesir, who knows what happened. Then there's a shayla, how long do these Edim Mesir remember the details of a transaction that they witnessed? And for that we had a machlokes. Rabbi Yochanan said they remember it as long as you need them. She can bring those Edim Mesir to Bezdin 2 years later. And they could say, yeah, we saw a get, we don't remember any details, it's going to be a good get. However, Rish Lakish holds that it's only right away. Only right away. No, I'm sorry, Rabbi Lozer said it's only right away. Meaning that the same day that she got her get, that day she can go to a Bezdin and get this verification. If she waits the second day, then you can't even rely on the Edim Mesir anymore, because they don't remember all the details. They remember they were witnesses on the get, but they don't remember all the details. The other thing we said, that even though Rabbi Lozer says that you could rely on the Edim Mesira, that only works for Gittin. But shar shtaros need to be able to provide you with proof long term, and they bring a raya from a pasuk. Rabbi Yochanan says that pasuk is just giving you an itzah tova. The pasuk is not telling you that a star would not be kosher unless it could be relied upon for many years to come. Okay, and then we got up to the Mishnah that we're going to be ma'arich on today. Excuse me, so we'll learn the Mishnah again inside. Everybody's kosher to write a get. That's going to be puzzling. How could a cheresh shoy to the cotton be good to write a get? This Mishnah we learned already, because we were discussing what happens if a lady has a tablet and you see it's by her husband, and he wrote a get on it. Is that going to be a kosher get? And the speculation was, does the woman understand the sophisticated transactions, where even though she's getting it back, but does she understand that she actually gave it to her husband so that he could be mekayim the benosa? And the Gemara brought a raya from this Mishnah, Ha'isha kesheves gita. The woman writes the get, meaning she's paying to have the get written. It's when it's hers, but yet she understands that it's given over to the husband, give back to her. But ish kesheves shover, and an ish writes a shover, meaning he wants a receipt, so he'll pay for it, he'll write it up, and then he'll just give it to her to get it signed. And then we have another interesting line, which we need to understand what it's referring to. She'ein kiyum haget ela b'chaisma. The kiyum haget is only with the chaisma. So I'm going to offer a preliminary, simple pshat. That is, the reason why the get is kosher. The reason why the get is kosher is because, even though he has to write it, is because the kiyum haget is with the chasima. And with the kiyum haget with the chasima, that's done when the get is with the husband. That's very preliminary. It also is saying that Eid Chasima Karsi. The main thing is Eid Chasima, and that's not how the Gemara is going to come out at the end. So I was just throwing out a preliminary shot so that I could at least read the words. Frank the Gemara, how could you allow a cheresh shoy to the cotton to write a get? V'alav b'nei deya ninu. They're not b'nei deya. And Rashi explains, v'lo yadi lichtov l'shma. Yes, they might be able to do the physical action of writing a get, but they don't know how to write something l'shma. So the question is, does a get have to be written l'shma? Does a get really need to be written l'shma? We had a very big machlokes. We've been discussing it all along. The chos of law means l'shma. But does b'chas of law mean the ksivas get, or does the b'chas of law mean the chasimas get? According to Reb Meir, that Eid Chasim Karsi, the b'chas of law is referring to the chasima. So therefore, the get doesn't have to be written l'shma. We even learned that if you find a get lying on the street, it's going to be a good get, as long as the chasima was l'shma. It's only according to Rabbi Elazar that the ksivas get has to be written l'shma. Because of that, in the long Tosfos suggests the Rabbi Elazar parach, the Reb Meir lechayish b'ksiva l'shma. If you hold that Eid Chasim is Karsi, then you don't need the Chasim l'shma. You don't need the ksiva l'shma according to Reb Meir. So Halav v'nedeinu must be, how could you, Rabbi Elazar, understand this Mishnah? There's no ksiva l'shma. Why is this important? Because I partaich the Mishnah going according to Reb Meir, saying Kima get el b'chosma. The Gemara clearly says, according to Tosfos over here, that we're going according to Rabbi Elazar. So right away, this pshat saying Kima get el b'chosma is going to require some modification. However, Tosfos, it's a long Tosfos. Tosfos at the end wants to say, "V'oid Omer Rabbeinu Yitzchak." By me, it's in bold. In the Tosfos, you have it in bold. Towards the end of the line, it's about just past the halfway mark of Tosfos. The last word on the line is Yitzchak. You see Tosfos, the last word on Yitzchak. V'oid Omer Rabbeinu Yitzchak. The Matin Lameimar to Sugizu Aliba Reb Meir. V'sol Kedaitach. The Reb Meir Nami Ba'inin Ksiva L'Shma Midurabanan. The Gzeiras Ksiva Atu Ksima. So now, Tosfos wants to say that the Gemara's kasha might even go according to Reb Meir, which means our Mishnah could even go according to Reb Meir. And why do you need Ksiva L'Shma Midurabanan? It's not a question. It's not a question. They don't have the ability to have kavanah l'shma because they're katana. I guess they don't understand the severity of what a get is and what it means you're writing l'shma. I don't know exactly what level, but could be even that level. The das of a cotton might not be sophisticated enough to do that as well. The Oidnira, and now I'm skipping a little bit further down in Tosfos. In the first approach of Tosfos, Rabbi Yitung said that could be according to Reb Meir, you need ksiva l'shma midrabanan. The Oidnira is a bombshell. The hasha sol kedaitach. The afilu Reb Meir boy ksiva l'shma midairaisa. Uv'chasimahu de pligi. So Tosfos here wants to have massive chiddush. This understanding that we always had of Reb Meir, that he holds Eid Chasim Karsi, Avada he holds you need ksiva l'shma, but you also need chasima. And Rebbe Elazar holds no, you only need ksiva, you don't need chasima. Tosfos takes it through the sugya, but it's an eye opener to us that until now we thought Reb Meir holds only Eid Chasim Karsi. Ksiva is not relevant at all. Now we see from the second two pshatim and Tosfos that even Reb Meir holds you need ksiva l'shma, whether it's the Raisa or the Rabban. Amar Rav Huna, and for Rav Huna, I'll tell you how it works with a cotton. What is the function of a gadol oimid al gabo? Zokt Rashi, and maybe this will give us a little bit more clarity than what Chaim asked. Write it l'tzorech ploni. So you want to know exactly what the l'shma has to be. I'm going to figure that it means the same thing that Rashi tells us that the gadol has to be oimid al gabo. And that simple thing, vice the choice, a child is not sophisticated enough to make that l'shma. The kasavar Rav Huna must eat Rebbe Elazar. Just as Tosfos said at the beginning, Rashi saying as well that our sugya holds right now that our Mishnah is going according to Rebbe Elazar, the boy ksiva l'shma, that the ksivas they get has to be l'shma. The seifa. So now Rashi asks my kasha. Rashi doesn't ask my kasha. I saw Rashi. Rashi says, now how are you going to understand the last line of the Mishnah? She'ein kima get ella b'chisamai. Zok Rashi v'seifa. Tika Omar. She'ein kima get ella b'chisamav. Hainu edem mesira. The kima get is with the edem mesira. Therefore, it doesn't matter if it's the woman who wrote the get. The roiv Gittin nimsarin b'fnei achoism. Why do we refer to the edem mesira as choisman? Because usually the people who signed it are the same people. They're standing there anyway. These are the people who are appointed to be Eidei Mesira. What line in the Mishnah, what halach in the Mishnah is the last line saying? What is it explaining? It's not explaining the star, because the star, it's not totally in the Eidei Mesira. It's going on the middle case, the case that states that the woman pays for the get. Why? Because anyway, it's the Eidei Mesira that's doing the work, and therefore it doesn't make a difference if she was the one who paid for it. But v'loy reisha lachshuei ksivas cheresh v'loy gadol agabav. Of course, saying that the get is only mekuyim b'choismav would not be a good justification to allow a cheresh shoyte v'katan to be able to write a get without gadol omer agabav. Amr Reb Nachman, Zok Reb Nachman. That's right. That's not what Rashi is saying here. Nobody said it was good on narration. Nobody would say it was good. Not Tosh, not Rashi, not anybody. He has no shaykhs to narration. That's right, but that's nothing to do with Toshis. Could be, yeah. Amalei Reb Nachman, Elamayata, Ovid Kachavim v'Yisrael Omer Agabav. If Omer Agabav helps for a cotton, why wouldn't Omer Agabav help for a guy as well? Elamayata, Ovid Kachavim v'Yisrael Omer Agabav. Hachanami de kosher. Are you going to say that it's kosher? If I asked you, based on the line that we just learned, is a guy kosher with Omer Agabav? Obviously not, right? The Gemara is challenging. Are you going to say this works for a guy? But obviously the Gemara is under the assumption that it wouldn't work for a guy. And if you're going to tell me it would work for a guy, but Tani we learned, puzzle. So the question is, why doesn't the Omer Agabav work for an Ovid Kachavim as well? And for the Gemara, Ovid Kachavim l'daitei din afshei Ovid. Yes, if it's a neutral kavana, a blind kavana like a cotton has, the Omer Agabav will provide it to kavana. We'll have to see how the kavana. We'll have to see how that works. But if it's a goy there, he has his own das, maybe connected what the Omer Agabav has. What about goy shekap or goy shekatan? I hear the datei dem she'avid the hagodahu the yesh boy das the aval pish is Omer loy kain. Even though this Omer Agabav is telling him what to do, Shema hu gamar beliber l'shemacher. Aval katan ein boy das ella l'ma shezeh mitzaveu. So Mati is asking, it's not a joke, it's a good question. What about a guy who's a cotton? Will Omer Agabav help for that? But so that's your own chiddush that you made up that the Gemara didn't think of. The Gemara doesn't say that. The Gemara doesn't say that. How come the Gemara didn't say by a guy? It's a very good svar, but it's not what the Gemara is not working with that now. And that will come up a little bit later. But it's a very nice shot, but the Gemara didn't say that. So I don't know the answer, but the only thing I could propose is, when does a cotton become a gadol? By a Yisrael, it's bar mitzvah. So we can easily define what's a cotton and what's a gadol. By a goy, it's not like that. A goy is not potter from mitzvahs, from the Zayin mitzvahs from the Noach, because he's under 13. A goy will have all the penalties of being over the Sheva mitzvahs from the Noach. By a goy, I think it has to do with when his maturity level is at the right stage. I'm not sure who's going to make that assessment, but it's much harder to pinpoint a goy that's a gadol versus a cotton than it is for a yid, because we have the halacha l'moshe Sinai that applies to yidin, that it's by bar mitzvah. I think your shaila is a much better shaila than my teretz. I just said it's harder to determine, but I'm not sure what the halacha would be. Okay, we have a little bit of issue of how this works. How does this work to have a Yisrael Omer Agabav? And the Rishonim struggle with this because, for instance, by chalitza, a cotton cannot do chalitza. Even with a cotton Omer, even if with a gadol Omer Agabav. So why is it that it works to write a get, but it doesn't work for chalitza? It doesn't work for chalitza because you're not a bardas. So there's a lot of talk in the Rishonim and the Achronim to explain the difference between chalitza and writing a get. One shot from the Rabbeinu Yoina is that this das oimer agabav is somehow working with the din of shlichus. It's working that oimer agabav has a din of a shliach, and he's providing the kavanah through a shlichus. And by chalitza, you can't do it with a shliach. Chalitza is one mitzvah that has to be done by the person himself. He cannot appoint a shliach. You can appoint a shliach to write a get. You can appoint a shliach to be mekadosh an isha, but you cannot be appointing a shliach to do chalitza. That has to be done by yourself. The Ritva says a different story. Ritva says that Omer al Gabav helps to do something like make a get. Making a get is not doing any halachic change. It's not creating any halais. It's the nesinas a get that does the halais. Writing the get, that's not creating a halais, and therefore it would be good with Yisrael Omer al Gabav. That shvacha type of kavanah would work. But by chalitza, the chalitza is doing the halais. It's actually freeing the woman. That's like the nesinas a get. For that, the kavanah of Omer al Gabav wouldn't be enough. So those are the two svaras that I heard over. No, because of not doing anything. It doesn't create a chalois. You're just writing again. The chalois is when you're giving it over. But maybe the kavuna necessary isn't such a severe kavuna as a kavuna for a chalois would be. Yeah. The whole thing what I said was wrong because you know what? In fact, it does work. Lav milsi elamayata oived gechavim Yisrael Omer al Gabav to have it severely the apostle. I was wrong. V'adai kosher who not only is he kosher, but afilu ein Yisrael Omer al Gabav. So my whole kasha was, and by a goy can help. As a matter of fact, it will work. A goy doesn't even need it. The gabei cher showed the cotton nami lasla de Rav Huna. Rav Nachman is rejecting Rav Huna's pshat, where Rav Huna said that you need gadol Omer al Gabav. It's not true. The Afagav, the Ein Gadol Omer al Gabav, Nami kosher. Even without Omer al Gabav, a cotton could write again. How does that work? Zokt Rab Nachman, because I disagree with Rav Huna's understanding of the Mishnah. And I hold the Masnis and Rab Meir. I hold the Mishnah is going according to Rab Meir. The Darish v'chasav the Kra achasim aseidim. I learn like Rab Meir. According to Rab Meir, I don't have an issue with the Lishma. So you're right. Anybody could write again. We have a Mishnah, the very next Mishnah that we're about to learn, says that a goy cannot be a shliach lo'ilacha or a shliach lo'iva. He cannot bring a get. The Mishnah, the next Mishnah that's talking about bringing a get, excludes a goy. If a goy was excluded from writing a get as well, why wasn't that mentioned in our Mishnah over here? The fact that the Mishnah only excluded a goy when he was talking about avah and not by ksiva is a raya mechlal delin ksiva kosher. Zok Rashi demid kapasel leilav kachavim b'sefer demasnisen. Since the very next Mishnah that we're about to learn says specifically that a goy cannot be a shlich loiva linyan avah. Why lifi she'eni b'teres Gittin v'kedushin? Here you have Chaim Svara. And why can't a goy be a shliach? Because he's einei b'teres Gittin v'kedushin. You cannot be a shliach to do something that you have no shaykhs to. So a goy could never have any shaykhs to Gittin v'kedushin. Therefore, he cannot even be a shliach for Gittin v'kedushin. Yet, when it talked about who is not capable of writing a get, the Tana omits to list a goy. Shema Mina, it proves to us dafka katani ba'avo. The Tana was very precise. It's only possible with a goy by hava. But ksiva is kosher, ksiva kosher, and why? Kidekatani taima, like we just said over here from Reb Nachman, she'ein kima get el b'choisma. I'm sorry, like the Mishnah says, she'ein kima get el b'choisma. So now Rashi is teaching it the way I originally taught it when I read the Mishnah. We're going according to Reb Meir, and according to Reb Meir, all that counts is the chasima. Therefore, we don't care if a cotton wrote it, we don't care if a goy wrote it. It's all because the chasim is the main thing. So now the last line of the Mishnah, Shein Kima Get Al B'Choisvav, is not only going back on a Isha Kaisevis Eskita, it's going back on the Cheresh Short of the Cotton. They could also write a get. You know why? Because En Kima Get El B'Choisvav, according to Reb Meir, you only need Chasima L'Shma. The Kasiva is not relevant, and therefore, even without a Yisrael or a Gadol Ayman Al Gabov, they'll still be kosher to write again. The Itan of Shire, if you're going to tell me that the Tana left it out, really he meant also to exclude a goy from writing again. But he left it out. You find Tana doesn't have always a conclusive list. So then why did the Tana decide to tell us that a goy can't be a shlich lalocha? It should have left it out there as well. That's not an option. Therefore, the fact that the Tana left out, actually speaks out that a goy cannot be a shlich lavo, but he doesn't mention anything about a goy when it comes to ksiva, a goy could write again. I'm sorry? I think so. Yeah, I think so. But in either case, the get will only be chal when it reaches the lady herself. Okay, gewaltig. If he's a git. We just learned the next Mishnah. The Mishnah is saying you can't be a shlich leiva unless you're eat, right? So Zok to Gemara Mechlal the lining ksiva kosher. V'atanya we learned in a brisa that says oivid kechavim possible. We learned in a brisa that an oivid kechavim cannot write a get. So that proves like Rav Huna. It proves that we're going with Rav Elazar. So tomorrow, Rav Elazar, you're right. That brisa we're going to Rav Elazar. Domer edim mesir karshi uveinon ksiva lishma. Correct the Gemara. V'havadai oivid kechavim Adate dinavshei ovid kovid. We know for sure the ovid kechavim is doing it adate dinavshei. Elamai it must be that you don't need lishma by the ksibas again. Amar Rab Nachman. Rab Nachman said, Omer hayer Rab Meir. Rab Meir used to say, Rab Meir who says Eidich Chasima Karsi, and you don't need ksiva lishma. One second. Let's just do these two Rashis. V'havadai. I'm sorry. He decided the pastor below the Dhamma the Bashir Karsi. The Chasima Zaydim ain't in the Torah. In fact, you don't even need to make Chasima according to Rabbi Elazar. The Hilchach v'chosav lo aksaf aget, and therefore ubeinon ksiva l'shma. V'avada ki kasvei ovid kechavim lav l'shma. Clearly, if a guy wrote it, it's not l'shma. So ovid kechavim adati d'nafshei kovid. He has his own intentions. Tanya apostle. Okay. Amar Rab Nachman. Amar Hayu Rab Meir. Afilu motzei ba'ashma. Ba'ashma. Since the ksiva is so not relevant, even if you merely found the get in the garbage that happened to have had the right name of the man, the right name of the woman, the right city, all the right information, but if zikr wasn't written for this man and he found it, if he gets it signed with kosher edim, kosher will be kosher. Dr. Rashi, it's a new halacha. At least in the first Rashi. So Eisei Rav Rab Nachman. The chas of law lishma. It says the chas of law. That means you need ksiva lishma. So how could you tell me afilu motza ba'ashma? My love, ksiva saget. Pashat pshat, when you type the chas, it means writing. It doesn't mean chasima. So how will Reb Meir understand that? We're like chasima seidim. When it says the chas of law, it means chasima seidim. Eisei Rav asked another kasha. It says in the Mishnah, kol get shenichtav. If you have a get that wasn't written for a specific woman, possible, it's possible. Once again, you see unique siva l'shma. Emo, no, we'll patage it. It means shenechtam shaloi l'shamisha possible. When the Mishnah says nechtam, it means the chasima, because that's the ikr that gives the ksiva its power. Esvei, another raya from another deal. Yeshu kaisvai, when he writes the get, he ilu kaisvai l'shma. What does that mean? Dr. Rashi. If he writes part of the get lishma, he ilu koisvay kula lishma. It's saying that if you write part of the get lishma, then it's as if you wrote the whole get lishma. But once again, you see the ksivas the get has to be lishma. My love, kishu koisvay the tarif lishma. If you write the tarif lishma, the tarif is the line that has the most important information. If you write that with a prefer shekavad of lishma, then the rest you don't have to write lishma because that's the main part of the get. But regardless, that this is what the Mishnah is saying. It's saying quite clearly that the ksiva has to be lishma. Even if you wrote the whole get Shaloi Lishma, but if it was signed Lishma, it's as if the whole get was written Lishma. The Bayasema, or if you don't want to kvetch each of these Mishnayos to partage that the Ksiva that the Tana refers to means Chasima, you'll say, Hani Masnisin Velozerhi. You could say that those Mishnayos are not going according to the Tana Rebbe Lozar. Domar Edim is here, Karsi. Gabalti. The nafkamina is if you need chesima. According to Rebbe Lozar, you don't need chesima seitim. That's right. Correct. Rabbi Yehuda Shmuel says, "V'hu sheshayir makam hatayr." Rabbi Yehuda Shmuel goes back to the original kasha. How could you have a cut and sign a get? I did not a day. And for Rabbi Yehuda Shmuel, you know why? Because the cotton didn't write the whole get. The cotton left over the most critical part of the get, and that will be written by a gadol. Kabaltik. Who's a shire? Zok Rashi. Cheresh. Try to the cotton makam hatayr. The chazav ben das is a tayr. So that the Mishnah says a cotton can write a get, that's the non-critical stuff. The most important line, of course, has to be written by a bardas. But he doesn't want to stel it on that it's going according to Rebbe Lozar and you need a gadol standing over him, like Rebbe Muni said. He doesn't want to force the mission to be like Rebbe Nachman learned that it's according to Rebbe Meir. So he offered a third shot, and that is the integral part of the get would have been written by a bardas. Rebbe Lozar, Rebbe Zrika, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Ein a Torah. I'm sorry. Oh, B'chein Amar B'chanan Mishmei De'ulav, U'shashayim Makam HaTorah. Rebbe Lozar, Rebbe Zrika, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Ein a Torah. It's not Torah. Meaning, Ein Shayim Malach, we're not listening to you. Correct the Gemara, my Ein a Torah. What do you mean to say Ein a Torah? Amar Rab Abba, Kan Hoidiyacha, She'ein Koyach L'Shema. What does that mean? Zokt Rashi, Kan Hoidiyacha, by saying that a cotton cannot write a get, it's teaching us, Mishnah Seinu, to Zilzalu, the Ksivas Gittin, our Mishnah that says that a cotton could write a get is making a very clear statement. Hoidiyacha, Shem Shum Koyach L'Shema, B'Ksiva Ala B'Chasima. Fakert, he learns Pshat in the Mishnah. But the fact that the Mishnah says a cotton can write a get is basically the Mishnah announcing that we pass on like Rav Meir. For Rav Meir, he do Amar Eid Chasima Kars. Correct the Gemara, Amar Rabba Barchanan, Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Lozar. Didn't we just say in the name of Rabbi Yochanan that our Mishnah is going according to Rabbi Lozar? It could actually be a machloikis what Rabbi Yochanan said. Okay, so to summarize, we have three pshatim in our Mishnah that says that a cheresh shoyt of a cotton can write again. Either it's going according to Rabbi Lozar, where it has to be written l'shma, and it's Yisrael Gadol Omer al Kabab, or it's going according to Rabbi Meir, or it's going according to Rabbi Lozar, but the critical part of the get was written by a bardas. That's item number one. Item number two is whether or not a goy could write a get. So it seems from the Gemara that a goy could write a get. And we were medayik that from the next Mishnah that we're about to learn that says a goy cannot bring a get. Zok the Heilige Mishnah. Hakok Shein Labi say get. Everybody could bring a get. Chutz mecheresh shoyta v'katan. Except for cheresh shoyta v'katan v'suma v'avit kachavim. What happens if kibala katan? The cotton got the get. He was nisman and they gave him the get. But v'higdal. But before he handed it over, he became a gadol. So maybe in middle he became a gadol. Or cheresh v'nispakeach. Or he was a cheresh and then he was able to hear again. Or suma v'nispateach. Or shoyta v'nishtafa, and he became sane again. Or avit kachavim and his gayer. Pasul, all of these are pasul, and this var is pashut because at the time of the shlichus he was not able to become a shliach. Abel pikeach v'nischarish v'chazav v'nispakeach. What if when he was makabel to get under his shlichus mandate he was healthy, and then he became unhealthy, but he didn't give the get over until he became healthy again? Or besuch v'nistama v'chazav v'nispakeach, or shafu v'nishtata v'chazav v'nishtava. Kosher. Those will be kosher. Zakla. What is the rule? Kosher tchilasa v'soife b'das kosher. As long as at the critical times he was healthy, when he got his meaning shlichus, and then when he gave his shlichus over, it's good. So Rabbi Chanan explains very simply: if you cannot be a shliach in one of these conditions, so then how come you continue being a shliach? The moment you're not right to be shliach, so your shlichus is bottled, and there's no new meaning. Rabbi Chanan brings a raya from this Mishnah that all of these people can be shluchim. The reason why we understand that they can't become shluchim because you can't be mamana them. It's only a chasar in the mina shluchim. You can't be mamana shot. You can't be mamana asuma. But if they already are shluchim, avada they could do it, provided that the critical actions are done when they're healthy. Therefore, all that's missing here is minui. Minui they have already, and the shlichus remains intact. They have no daya. As well, Nami Delav he's not the Torah's Gittin the Kedushin like Chaim spoke out originally. It's fine. El Asuma, am I law? Why can't Asuma be a shliach for a get? Reb Sheshes, you know why? Because he doesn't see the person, he doesn't know who he's taking it from, he doesn't know who he's giving it to. This is very schwer. Why? Are you telling me that the shliach has to know for sure who he's taking it from and who he's giving it to? Dr. Yosy says, Mikan Mashma, the tzarech sheyakar shliach shezawa balbazu ishtay. He has to know, a shliach leluka has to know who the husband is, and he has to independently know who the wife is, and he has to know he's taking it from the man to the wife. So it's a lot more than b'fani nechtam. He's got to know all the details. Dr. Yosy says, you don't have necessarily a raya. Look at this. The shemi yesh lechalik, the dafka suma sheyochal atoytoy yesh lochish yoysh shemi yatu. Dafka by asuma, we insist that he knows the people because we don't want to give it to the wrong person. But a regular person doesn't necessarily have to know. He's not going to be as easily fooled. They can't pull the wool over his eyes, literally. Well, yeah, but how could he know? He didn't see the person. I hear what you're saying. According to you, that a Suma can't recognize anybody, so how could a Suma live with his wife? Maybe she's an Eshish, maybe she's not his wife. In the olden days where they didn't have lights, how could anyone be with their wives at night? Maybe it's the wrong woman. Look, Yaakov got fooled. Ella, it must be betfias eina dekala. We say that people recognize voices, although now AI is starting to duplicate voices, which is going to be very dangerous because they can have these scams. But I'll call upon them, there's something called tefillah. Like, oh, you recognize somebody's voice. So if that's the case, what's the problem with the blind person delivering the get? Hakanami, b'tefillah the kala. So what is the problem with Asuma delivering the get? Elam Rabbi Yosef, very simple. Hacha b'chutzlar taskinan. We're talking about in chutzlar, the boy lamemar b'fani nechtav b'fani nechtam v'leimat lamemar. A blind person cannot say b'fani nechtav b'fani nechtam. You know why? Because he couldn't see it. Amalei Abaye, Zokta Abaye, Elamayata, Pasuach v'nistama, the Motzi Amar Hachi, the Motzer Amar Hachi Nami the kosher. What happens if when he took the get, he saw the ksiva and the chesima lishma, and now he became blind? He could stay b'fani nechtam, even though he's blind. So why is the Mishnah saying that a blind person can't give a get? Of course he can give a get, because there's no problem here with b'fani nechtam, b'fani nechtam. Zok Gemara, if you're going to say that it's kosher, even though he's blind, the Mishnah seems to contradict that. But katani pasuach v'nistama, v'chazav v'nispateach, kosher. Chazav v'nispateach in, loy chazav v'nispateach loy. So our Mishnah seems to say that if he's blind at the time of the delivery of the get, he can't deliver the get. Why not? He can say b'fani nechtam, b'fani nechtam, because he remembers what he saw back then. Really, Asuma is an exception to the other halachas in our Mishnah, and Asuma could deliver a get even though he's blind, as long as he saw the b'fani nechtav and the b'fani nechtam. There it's dafke time of the chazav v'nishtava haloi chazav v'nishtava haloi halinami pesuach v'nistama v'chazav v'nispateach. But really, even if he's blind, it will work as well.
Didn't we say? Didn't the Gemara say? Didn't the Gemara say previously that the shliach can say b'fanei nechtam even if he just hears the cipher writing the get? He hears the sound of the quill on the cloth.
True, but the b'fanei nechtam he had to see.
Okay.
I was thinking that as I was reading it. I'm sorry? You didn't say what in the Gemara? The Gemara says you don't have to see it. He can just hear that they're writing. Right. But the chesima, he has to see the Eidim sign. That he has to see with his eyes. Yeah. Amar Bashi, Dekadami. We could prove that that's the case. that this rule that you have to become healthy again before you give the get doesn't apply to a blind man. Because if it applied to every single case in the Mishnah said Zak Klal kosher tchilasei v'soifei bedas kosher, which seems to be talking about a shoita. It could have said, if it wanted to be including in this rule a blind person, it should have said like atani kosher tchilasei v'soifei bekashrus kosher. Shemami na that you don't have to be tchilasei v'soifei bekashrus because a blind person can give a get. Boy minei mirabami. Eved maus yas shlich lekabel get isha miyad baila. Could you make an eved into a shlich lekabala? Amalahu midikapas leiloi v'kachavim. Since we passed all the leiloi v'kachavim, the Mishnah says the leiloi v'kachavim is possible. Mechlal David kosher. We could be medayik that an eved would be kosher. So therefore, the kosher lavos lava Rashi liyashliach legarish kach kosher lekabala liyashliach lehiskarish shein chiluk tam b'neim. If an eved, our Mishnah is talking about a shliach lava. Our Mishnah doesn't list off an eved as not being kosher, only a goy. So therefore, since an eved can be a shliach lava, an eved can be a shliach lekabala. Amar Basi, Amar B'Yechanan. Ein ha'eved nas a shliach lekabel get l'isha miyad baila. An eved cannot become a shliach to be makabel get miyad baila. Why? L'fisha einoi v'toyres Gittin v'kedushin. So he's arguing on what we just said. Matzkav l'Rabbi Elazar haima b'milsa delese. What's the reason why an eved cannot be a shliach for gerushin and kedushin? Because l'fisha einoi v'toyres Gittin v'kedushin. So you're telling me that's the only disqualification? Habamilsa de Isay Kosher? Are you telling me that anyone who's in the Pasha of Gittin the Kedushin can be a shliach for it as well? I'll show you can't depend on that. Because I'll show you somebody who's in Teres Gittin the Kedushin and he still can't be a shliach. The Oivit Kahabim, the Kusi, the Isnu B'Teres Truma. They are B'Teres Truma. The Nafshayu. They have payers that require a fresh Truma. They have to be Mafish Truma. The Eved has to be Mafish Truma. The Goy has to be Mafish Truma. And exactly how it would be relevant that they would have pairs of truma, we'll get to. Utanan we learned, yet even though a goy and an eved could do their own truma, but a goy can never be a shliach to do truma for Yisrael. Even if the Yid appointed him to be a shliach, ain't truma to truma. My timer. Lav mishum d'chsiv. It has to be nothing to do with because it's yan teres truma. Yes, your whole rule that you could only be a shliach for something that you could do yourself is obviously not valid. Because here there's obviously a different reason why the Oivit can't be a shliach. Because he could do the truma for himself. Because of the pasuk that says atem gam atem, ma atem Yisrael. We learn shlichus from truma, and we learn from there that just like you're a Yisrael, Avku Chacham Yisrael, so too the shliach that you're going to appoint to be mafresh or trumas and mashus has to be a Yisrael. So therefore, your whole reasoning why an eved shouldn't be able to be a shliach wouldn't work. I won't learn like you did that you learn from truma that every shliach has to be a Yisrael, which would exclude an eved. Rather, I'll darshan that same pasuk, but differently. Ma'atem b'dei bris, afshul chacham b'dei bris. The shliach has to be a b'dei bris, and the eved is considered a b'dei bris. So therefore, not necessarily would an eved be excluded from the pasha of shlichus, and therefore the eved would be able to be a shliach lava. Okay, we're running late, so I'll stop here. Lahavaha for truma as well, But I'm relating it back to our sugya here as well. I just want to discuss very quickly. Where is a goy mechuyev to take truma from their own products? Because we hold ein kinyan la'eved kachavim be'eretz Yisrael afkim ektushas meiser. So therefore, Dr. Rashi, if we hold that a goy's purchase of property will not remove the Yiddish abilas, and therefore it's still mechuyev in trumas and meisers. So kum techayis, if a goy buys property in Israel, we don't say it becomes goyish property, but it's still his property, and he's growing food in it. So the food that he's growing would have a kedusha control. How is it possible that by him being makdashit it works? So Rashi also says that the hektish of Oived Gechavim works because when in the parsha of hektish it says ish, and from the double lashon ish, we learn the rabbis says Oived Gechavim shenoidrim nedarim and nedavos Yisrael. Toshas wants to say you don't have to limit it only if you hold that ein kinyan lenachi the Eretz Yisrael of Kulim Midimashus. Even if you hold they do have such a kinyan, there's still some other ways where you can have it. For instance, the guy didn't buy a barren field that he planted. The pears were already growing in the field. They were grown by 1/3, which now makes them mechuyev trumas u'maasros. If the guy buys that field from the yid later, even if normally you would say that he could be mafkia a field b'dei maasros, but the fruits that grew a shlish while the field belonged to the yid would still be mechuyev in maasros. Okay, okay, that's fine. Inami tells you there's another option. Another option is the guy could have planted it, and then he could have sold the property to the yid, and in the yid's property, in the yid's resource, it grew 1/3, and then the guy bought it back. And another option that Tosfos offers is if the property belongs to a yid, but the guy became a sharecropper, so he made a deal with the yid. I'm going to plant your field, and I'm going to get 1/3 or 1/2 of the produce. So that produce that he has a din of tevel, and he has to be mafish from shemashis. If yesh kidin it depends if you hold yesh kinyan. I don't know what we passed on halacha l'maaseh yesh kinyan, unless you have like a weird scenario that Tosfos is offering in a normal case where a guy buys a field and someone owns it. I'm not sure what the halacha will be. The what? Ein Torah. Oh, the quote is from Rabbi Yochanan. No, Ein Torah means to say that our mission is going according to Rabbi Lazar is not shaykh. Ein Torah, the Tana is quite clear. The Tana is quite clear that you don't have to write the get l'shma because we pass on like Rabbi Meir that it's the chasima that's the most important. Yeah, it's very. I never thought to do it. Okay, shkoyach.